The desert has a cruel way of telling secrets. It doesn't whisper them through the trees or carry them across rivers. It lets them rot under the sun until someone stumbles across the truth. And on that day, the truth was circling above in the form of black wings. A lone rancher named Caleb spotted them first, buzzards, swooping low against the pale sky. He'd been out mending the fence line on his stretch of land, not far from where the rocks turned to dry sand and the grass gave up trying. The birds weren't just passing through. They were circling. Tight, eager, waiting. And Caleb knew enough of this country to realize what that meant. Something, or someone, was dying out there. He tugged the reins of his old horse, Dusty, and nudged him toward the ridge. His stomach tightened as he got closer. The desert air was heavy, still, but the sound of wings cutting through it was sharp and unsettling. Each step seemed to drag longer than the last. Then he saw her. At first he thought it was just another body, another soul swallowed by the unforgiving West. Folks went missing all the time, outlaws shot, wanderers lost, settlers broken. But when Caleb leaned from the saddle, he realized she was still breathing. Barely. Her face was caked with dust, her lips cracked from thirst, and her dress, torn and stained, told a story he didn't yet understand. Her eyes fluttered open for the briefest moment, and in a voice softer than the desert wind, she whispered words he would never forget. "They left me for the vultures." Caleb froze. He wasn't a man easily rattled, but something about those words felt heavier than the sun on his back. He jumped down, brushing the birds away with his hat, and dropped to his knees. "Ma'am, you hear me?" His voice cracked from nerves more than the heat. "You hang on now." But her eyes slipped shut again. Caleb checked her pulse, weak but steady. Relief rushed through him, though it quickly mixed with dread. Whoever had left her out here had done it with purpose. This wasn't a stranger who'd simply gotten lost. Someone wanted her gone. He lifted her carefully, feeling how light she was, like the desert had already stripped her down to bones. Dusty whinnied nervously, as if warning his master that trouble was on the horizon. Caleb laid the girl across the saddle, swung up behind her, and turned toward home. But even as he rode, the vultures didn't scatter. They followed, almost as if they knew the story wasn't finished. Back at the ranch, Caleb laid her down inside the cool shade of his barn, away from prying eyes. He fetched water, dampened a rag, and pressed it to her lips. Slowly, painfully, she drank. When her eyes opened again, they were full of fear, and something else he couldn't place. "Don't," she rasped. "Don't take me back." Caleb frowned. "Back where?" Her hand trembled as she clutched his sleeve. "If they find me, they'll finish it." He studied her for a long moment, his jaw tight. This wasn't just a girl who'd collapsed in the desert. This was a hunted soul, marked by someone dangerous enough to leave her for dead. The rancher had a choice. Pretend he never saw her, let the vultures finish their work, and keep his quiet life. Or keep her alive and invite the storm that was surely coming with her. Caleb wasn't the kind of man who liked storms. But staring down at her, broken and begging, he realized he wasn't the kind of man who could walk away either. And in that decision, silent, heavy, and irreversible, the rancher's world began to change. Because saving her meant stepping into someone else's fight. And in the Wild West, some fights never ended. The girl didn't stir much through the night. Caleb had set her up in the spare room of his small ranch house, laid an old quilt across her, and sat by the doorway with a lantern burning low. He wasn't much for visitors, least of all women who carried trouble on their backs. But something about her presence held him in place. Like if he turned away for even a moment, she might vanish. By morning, the desert sun cut through the thin curtains, filling the room with a pale glow. Caleb rubbed the sleep from his eyes just as the girl coughed, weak but alive. He brought her a tin cup of water and crouched at her side. "Easy now," he said. "Sip slow." Her hands trembled as she drank. When she finished, She set the cup down with effort and looked at him for the first real time. Her eyes were sharp, full of a life she didn't yet trust him with. "What's your name?" Caleb asked. For a moment she didn't answer. Her gaze shifted to the window, to the horizon beyond, as if she half expected to see riders cresting the ridge. Finally her lips parted. "Evelyn." The name hung heavy in the air. Evelyn. Caleb didn't recognize it, but the way she said it, soft, almost mournful, made him feel like he should. "All right, Evelyn," he said carefully. "You're safe here. No one's gonna hurt you." Her eyes flicked back to him, doubtful. "That's what you think." Caleb leaned back, unsettled. "Who left you out there?" Her face twisted, pain and anger fighting for space. "Men who swore they'd protect me. Men who called themselves family." The words struck Caleb like a stone to the chest. Family didn't leave you for the vultures. Unless there was more to her story. He pushed for answers, but Evelyn shut down, closing her eyes and pulling the quilt tighter. It was clear. Whatever her past held, she wasn't ready to open that door. Not yet. Caleb spent the rest of the day tending the ranch, though his mind never wandered far from the girl in his house. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind that rattled the shutters, he half expected trouble to come riding in. That evening, while feeding the horses, Caleb noticed something strange. A set of tracks in the dirt by the fence line. They weren't his, and they weren't fresh. Maybe a day old, maybe less. Boot prints, heavy ones. Someone had been close, watching. He followed the trail a ways until it disappeared into the rocks. Whoever it was, they hadn't stayed long, but the message was clear. Evelyn hadn't wandered into his life by chance. Trouble already knew the path to his door. Back inside, Evelyn was awake, staring at the lantern flame with a hollow expression. Caleb sat across from her, his chair creaking under his weight. "You said they'll come back for you," he began. "I saw tracks today. Someone sniffing around." Her breath caught, and her voice came out in a whisper. "Then it's already started." Caleb frowned. "What started?" She looked at him then, really looked, like she was deciding whether to trust him with the weight she carried. Finally, she spoke. "They think I know something. Something I was never supposed to see." The room went silent except for the ticking of the old clock. Caleb leaned forward, his voice low. "What did you see, Evelyn?" Her lips trembled. For a heartbeat, he thought she'd tell him. But instead, she shook her head. "If I say it out loud, it'll kill us both." Well, Caleb's gut tightened. He'd heard confessions from dying men, last words from outlaws on the gallows, but never anything as heavy as that. Before he could press further, Dusty let out a sharp whinny from the barn. Caleb shot up, his chair clattering to the floor. He grabbed his rifle from the wall and moved to the window. In the distance, just beyond the fence line, the sun was sinking, and with it, a shadow moved across the ridge. A rider, watching. Then, just as quick as he appeared, he turned and vanished into the desert. Caleb's hands tightened on the rifle. He didn't need Evelyn to tell him the truth anymore. Trouble wasn't coming. Trouble was already here, and if he was going to keep her alive, he'd have to step into a fight he never asked for. Caleb didn't sleep that night. He sat in the dark, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the door. Every howl of the coyotes, every rustle of the wind through the dry brush set his nerves on edge. Somewhere out there, a man had been watching, and Caleb knew he'd be back. By morning, Evelyn stirred. She looked stronger than she had the day before, though her face still carried the weariness of someone who'd been running for too long. Caleb handed her a piece of bread and a tin cup of water. She ate in silence, but her eyes kept darting to the windows, to the open desert beyond. "You got enemies," Caleb said finally, his voice rough. "And I reckon they're the kind that don't give up easy." Her hand froze halfway to her mouth. "You saw him too?" Caleb gave a slow nod. "One rider, just watching." Evelyn swallowed hard, then set the bread down as though it had turned to stone in her hand. "If it was one, there'll be more." Caleb leaned back in his chair. He wasn't a man who liked riddles, and Evelyn was full of them. Why, Evelyn? What do they want with you? For a long moment she said nothing. Her gaze drifted to the crackling lantern, as if the flame might burn the memory away. Finally she whispered, I saw something I wasn't supposed to. They killed a man, buried him out by the dry creek bed. But I saw who did it, and now they can't let me live. Caleb's jaw tightened. Murder. That was heavier than he'd imagined. And if she was right, then whoever those men were, they weren't just cruel. They were desperate. Who are they? Caleb asked. Her voice faltered. My brothers. The words hit harder than any bullet. Caleb stared, stunned. Your own kin? She nodded, tears welling in her dust-streaked eyes. They've always been cruel. My father died years back, left them the land and left me. Nothing. I stayed because I had nowhere else. Then I saw what they did. They said I was a curse. And when I tried to run, they tied me up, dragged me into the desert and left me for the vultures. Her voice broke, but her eyes, full of fire now, never left his. They won't stop, Caleb. Not until I'm gone. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He'd seen plenty of bad men in his time, but family turning on their own blood. That carried a bitterness that stuck in his throat. You should have kept riding, she said suddenly, almost angrily. Should have left me there. Caleb shook his head. That ain't the kind of man I am. For the first time, a flicker of something soft crossed Evelyn's face. Gratitude. Maybe even hope. But before the moment could settle, Dusty cried out from the barn again. Louder this time. Urgent. Caleb shot to his feet, rifle in hand. Evelyn's face drained of color. What is it? She whispered. Caleb didn't answer. He moved to the window, his heart pounding. Out beyond the fence line, 3 riders sat their horses in a row, the sun gleaming off their rifles. They weren't hiding this time. They wanted to be seen. Caleb's mouth went dry. Your brothers? Evelyn pushed herself to her feet, clutching the quilt around her shoulders. When she peered past him out the window, her breath caught. 2 of them. The third. He's worse. The riders didn't move closer. They just sat there, silent as statues, watching. Finally, one of them lifted a hand and pointed straight at the house. Then they turned their horses and rode off slow, like they had all the time in the world. Evelyn's knees gave out and she collapsed into the chair. They're warning you, she whispered. If you keep me here, they'll burn everything you own to the ground. Caleb's grip on his rifle tightened. He'd always lived by a simple rule. Keep your head down, work your land, and trouble won't find you. But trouble had found him anyway. He turned back to Evelyn, her eyes wide with fear. If they're coming, he said, voice like steel, then we best be ready. But deep down, Caleb knew this fight wasn't just about protecting his ranch anymore. The way Evelyn looked at him, the way her voice shook when she said family, it was about something more. And the desert doesn't forgive men who dig up secrets better left buried. The next 2 days passed like a storm that refused to break. Caleb fixed the fence, sharpened tools, and oiled his rifle, but his eyes never stopped scanning the horizon. Evelyn grew stronger with every hour, though her fear deepened. She spoke little, and when she did, her words carried weight like stones. They'll come when the sun drops, she whispered one evening, staring out the window as if she could already see them in the fading light. They like the dark. They like the fear. Caleb stood at the hearth, his hands resting heavy on the rifle. Then let 'em come. They'll find I ain't afraid of shadows. Evelyn looked at him, almost pitying. You don't understand. These aren't just men. They don't know mercy. They don't care who they burn to get what they want. Caleb didn't answer. He wasn't a man of many words. His silence often spoke louder than his voice. But inside, a fire was building. That night, as the moon rose, the sound of hooves shattered the quiet. Caleb stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, lantern light flickering at his side. Evelyn stayed inside, clutching the edge of the window, her breath short. 3 riders appeared again, their shapes black against the silver desert. They slowed as they reached the yard, dust swirling around their boots. The man in the middle dismounted. Broad shoulders, a cruel mouth and eyes that glittered with a hunger Caleb had seen only in wolves. He tipped his hat back and spat in the dirt. "Evenin'," the man drawled. "Name's Silas. I reckon you've got something of ours." Caleb leveled the rifle, his jaw tight. "Ain't yours if you left her for the birds." Silas chuckled, a low, cold sound. "She ain't worth saving. She's poison, always has been. We're just cleaning up what our pa should have finished years ago." Evelyn's voice cracked from inside the house. "Don't listen to him, Caleb. He killed a man. I saw it." Silas's smirk widened. "Is that what she told you?" "Let me guess. She said we did it. My brothers and me." He leaned closer, his eyes hard as flint. "What she didn't tell you is who we buried." Caleb's chest tightened. "Then who was it?" Silas's voice dropped, venom dripping from every word. "Our own father." The silence that followed was heavier than a coffin lid. Caleb's stomach churned. Evelyn's face, pale and stricken in the window, told him everything he needed to know. She hadn't lied. Not exactly. She just hadn't told the whole truth. "You left that part out," Caleb muttered, glancing back at her. Evelyn's lips trembled. "He was a monster. He beat us, starved us. Silas snapped first, and the others helped. I didn't swing the shovel, Caleb, I swear. But I saw it. I saw everything. And now they need me gone before the law gets wind." Silas took a step forward, his boots crunching in the dirt. "You keep her here, rancher, and you'll be burying yourself next to him." Caleb raised the rifle higher. Not another step. Silas's smile vanished. His hand twitched toward the revolver at his hip. Tension crackled in the air like lightning before a storm. The two men stood locked in silence, breath shallow, every muscle wound tight. Then, without warning, Silas whistled. His brothers spurred their horses, circling wide, kicking up clouds of dust. Caleb's eyes darted left, then right. He couldn't cover them all at once. Inside the house, Evelyn screamed, "Caleb!" And in that heartbeat, a shot rang out. The lantern shattered. The porch exploded in sparks of fire. Caleb staggered back, rifle slipping from his hands. He hit the ground hard, the sound of horses thundering around him. Through the smoke and the chaos, Evelyn's voice tore through the night. "Run, Caleb! Run before they kill you." But Caleb wasn't a man who ran. Not now. Not with the truth burning through him. Because this wasn't just about saving Evelyn anymore. This was about facing the kind of evil that wore a family name like a crown. The shot still rang in Caleb's ears as smoke drifted through the broken lantern glass. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding, rifle back in his grip. Dust filled the air as the riders circled, their silhouettes slicing across the moonlight. Silas's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a knife. "Hand her over, rancher. Last chance." Caleb's blood boiled. He'd lived his whole life by a quiet code. Keep your land, mind your work, and leave others be. But that code shattered the moment he saw Evelyn lying in the dirt, left for dead by the people meant to protect her. He raised his rifle, fired once. A shot cracked the night, grazing one brother's arm and sending his horse screaming into the dark. The second brother fired back, splinters exploding from the porch post inches from Caleb's head. Inside the house, Evelyn clutched the window frame, her face pale with terror. "Caleb, don't die for me." But Caleb wasn't listening. Not anymore. Silas strode forward, revolver drawn, eyes burning. "She's a curse, rancher. She'll drag you down same as she did Pa." Caleb leveled the rifle squarely at him. "No. The only curse out here is you." The two men fired almost as one. Caleb's shot rang true. Silas staggered, the revolver slipping from his grasp. His knees buckled and he crumpled into the dust. The other two froze. For the first time, Caleb saw fear in their eyes. They glanced at their fallen brother, then at the rifle still steady in Caleb's hands. Without another word, They turned their horses and fled into the night, swallowed by the desert. Silence fell, heavy, final. Caleb lowered the rifle, chest heaving. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of what had just been done. He stepped toward Silas's body, the desert wind tugging at his coat. Behind him, Evelyn stumbled out of the house, barefoot on the porch, eyes wide. She stared at the fallen man, then at Caleb. "You saved me," she whispered, voice breaking. Caleb looked at her, sweat and dust streaking his face. "No, you saved yourself. You spoke the truth." Evelyn shook her head, tears streaming. "You don't understand. I didn't just see them kill Pa. Her voice cracked. "I wanted him dead. I prayed for it. When Silas struck the first blow, I didn't stop him. I let it happen." The confession hung in the night air like a noose. Caleb's stomach twisted. He had seen killers before, but this was something different. She dropped to her knees beside him, trembling. "I'm not innocent, Caleb. Maybe I never was. That's why they hate me. Because they see it too." For a long moment, Caleb said nothing. The desert around them felt endless, a graveyard of secrets. Finally, he knelt beside her. "We all got darkness," he said softly, "but you're still here. That means something." Her eyes met his, wet with fear and hope. "What if it means I'm no better than them?" Caleb shook his head. "No, they chose to bury the truth. You chose to speak it. That's the difference." The two of them sat there in silence, the buzzards still circling high above but keeping their distance now. The vultures had lost their claim. When dawn broke, the desert looked different, lighter somehow. Caleb hitched up the wagon and wrapped Silas's body in canvas. Evelyn watched from the porch, her face unreadable. "Where will you take him?" she asked. "Back to the creek bed," Caleb said, his voice steady. "But this time, the law will know where he lies." Evelyn nodded, though her hands twisted in her lap. She knew her life would never be the same. But she also knew, without Caleb, she wouldn't have a life at all. As the wagon rolled away, she whispered the words she'd said when he first found her, but this time with a different weight. "They left me for the vultures." She looked out at the rising sun. "But you didn't?" And in that, not salvation, not forgiveness, but a chance.